share their story and give you insight on who they are, how they show up, and why they show up. Put your hands together for our speaker of 2026 Mental Health Matters Day, Evan Marmo. Okay, Evan, you gotta groove while you come up here, man. Come on, keep it going. We gotta keep that same energy. Hey, hey, put your hands together one more time for Evan.
All right, before I start, I wanted to give a shout out to Stop Stigma Sacramento for giving me the opportunity to speak as a mentally ill therapist for so many years. So can we give them a round of applause and Marty with Stop Stigma? Thank you so much. All right, my speech is not about me. It's about mental health, and it's about the community, and it's about what's causing our mental health crisis. So I want to start off with a question that we get asked almost every day. How are you doing? And I want to talk about the lie that we tell in response. I'm good, I'm fine, I'm living the dream. But beneath those polite placeholders, what we really mean is that we're experiencing a quiet, vibrating kind of dread. It's a low-frequency hum in the background of our lives, a sense of something is fundamentally and structurally wrong. It's the feeling that we're running a race where the line is being moved 10 feet back every time we get close to it. For decades, we've been told that this dread is a disorder. We've been told it's a chemical glitch in our brains, a personal failure, a lack of serotonin, or a flaw in our mindset. We've been conditioned to look inward for the source of our misery. We scan our childhoods, our diets, our sleep hygiene, our thought patterns, looking for that broken gear. The billion-dollar wellness industry and the pharmaceutical complex has converged on a single highly profitable message. The problem is inside you, and therefore the solution must be bought by you. But imagine you're standing in the middle of a burning building. Your heart is racing, your lungs are burning, and your brain is screaming, "Get out." Now imagine that you're coughing and gasping for air. Someone walks up to you and hands you a glossy brochure that says, "Deep breathing techniques," and tells you that if you just learned how to center yourself, the smoke wouldn't bother you so much. They suggest that perhaps your perception of the fire is the real problem. They offer you a pill to slow your heart rate so you can stand in the flames more comfortably. What would you think of that person? You'd think they were cruel. You don't need a breathing technique. You need the fire to stop. You don't need mindfulness to help you accept the sensation of being burned. You need a fire extinguisher and an exit. I'd rather start looking at the fire, because until we put that out, we're going to remain squarely in a mental health crisis. Let's dismantle the lie that our suffering is a private, isolated event. We're going to talk about why our culture is obsessed with fixing the symptoms while it is actively, profitably ignoring the systems that break us in the first place. This isn't just a talk about mental health. This is a manifesto for the world where we stop medicating our victims of a sick society and start healing the society itself. Let's get real about the why. We talk about the mental health crisis today like it's a spooky mystery, like a viral pandemic that just showed up one day because we spent too much time on TikTok. It's not a mystery, it's a byproduct. It's the logical, predictable output of a machine designed to prioritize profit over pulse. Since the late 1970s, the social contract hasn't just been broken, it's been incinerated. Think back to the promise that existed for a brief window in the mid-20th century. It wasn't perfect, but it was a promise. If you worked 40 hours a week, you could afford a home. You could raise a family and a single income. You can retire with dignity. You can see a doctor without choosing between your health and your rent. Today, that promise looks like a fairy tale. We live in a world where the 1% holds more wealth than the entire middle class combined. We see CEO pays that have jumped 1,000% since 1978, while the real wages for the average worker have remained virtually flat. We see people at the checkout counter who can't afford the very groceries they're scanning for 8 hours a day as the employees. In economics, we call this income inequality. In sociology, we call it precarity. But in the human brain, we call it chronic, inescapable stress. When you're one $400 emergency away from losing your home, your brain does not stay in rest mode. It cannot. Evolution was hardwired to survive. When your housing is precarious, when your healthcare is tied to a job that could disappear tomorrow, when your debt is a mountain you'll never finish climbing, your amygdala stays in a state of high alert. It says, survive or die. Your body is flooded with cortisol and adrenaline, not for a few minutes to outrun a predator, but for weeks, months, and years. This is what we have the audacity to diagnose as generalized anxiety disorder. Let's be clear. If you're anxious because you cannot afford rent, you do not have a disorder. You have a rational response to a predatory economy. If you're depressed because you work for 60 hours a week and still can't take your kids to the movies, you aren't suffering from a negative thought pattern, you're suffering from a stolen life. We're working harder than any generation before us. We are more productive than any generation in history. We have created more wealth than the kings of old could ever imagine. And yet we are sicker, more stressed than our parents. This isn't a cognitive distortion, this is a data point. Our anxiety is actually our internal alarm system working perfectly, telling us that the environment we are in is hostile to human life. I want to talk about the specific kind of theft that we rarely discuss in therapist office, the theft of time and attention. We were promised that technology would set us free. In the 1960s, futurists predicted that by the year 2000, we'd be working 15 hours a week because automation would handle the rest. They worried about what we would do with all the excess leisure time. Look around. Does anyone here feel like they have excess leisure time? Yeah, I didn't think so. Instead of setting us free, technology has turned our homes into offices, our beds into desks. We are the first generation that carries our bosses in our pockets. The ping of a Slack or a Teams message at 9 p.m. isn't just an annoyance, it's a neurological intrusion. It tells your nervous system that you're never truly off the clock, never truly safe to relax. We have destroyed the third space, the community center, the park, the porch, and replaced it with the digital guard towers, where we're always being watched, always being ranked, and always being told something. We have entered into an era of time poverty. We are starving for minutes. We skip meals to make meetings. We skip sleep to catch up on chores. We skip the very things that make us human. Play, hobbies, aimless wandering, deep conversation, because they don't have an ROI. They don't have a return on investment. When you're time poor, your relationships suffer. You don't have the bandwidth to be a good friend or a present parent. And when your relationships suffer, your mental health craters. We then try to fix this by buying more convenience, ordering takeout because we're too tired to cook, paying for apps to automate our lives, which means we need to work more to pay for the convenience. It's a closed loop of exhaustion. Furthermore, our attention, the very fabric of our consciousness, is being mined like raw material. Every like, every notification, every personalized ad is designed by a room full of PhDs to hijack your dopamine system. We are being fragmented. We are losing the ability to think deeply, to sit with ourselves and just be. And then we wonder why we feel scattered and unfocused. We call it ADHD, but in many cases it's just the result of living inside a machine that's constantly screaming for our eyeballs. So how does the system respond when we finally break? How does it react when the human capital starts to crack under the pressure of being squeezed? For every drop of humanity and productivity, it gaslights us. It uses the beautiful hijacked language of wellness to shift the burden of systemic failure onto the shoulders of the individual. Think about the modern office. Your company sees that the entire staff is burnt out. They see people weeping in cars before shifts. They see the turnover rate skyrocketing. Do they hire people to distribute the workload? No. Do they give everyone a raise to ease the crushing weight of inflation? Of course not. That would affect the quarterly earnings. Instead, they put a bowl of free fruit in the break room and they send an automated email about Wellness Wednesdays. They offer you a 20% discount on a meditation app that tells you to observe your thoughts without judgment, while your manager is literally judging your productivity by the millisecond. They tell you to take a mental health day, as if 24 hours of not working is going to magically undo 364 days of being underpaid and undervalued. This is called the self-care scam. It's a clever and insidious way of saying your burnout's your responsibility, fix it on your own time. It turns your health into just another chore to put on your to-do list. If you're still depressed, the system implies it's because you didn't meditate long enough. You're still exhausted, it's because you didn't drink enough alkaline water or do enough forest bathing. It frames the struggle for survival as a lifestyle choice. It keeps us looking at our own reflections in the mirror, searching for the flaw in our character or the deficiency in our routine, so we don't have time to look out the window at the billionaires who are setting the world on fucking fire, pardon my language. It keeps us isolated in our self-improvement, ensuring that we never realize that the person in the cubicle next to us is feeling the same exact thing. Self-care has been weaponized to keep us from collective care. It's much easier for a corporation to sell a stress worker a bath bomb and a lavender candle than it is to grant a living wage and a predictable schedule. We're being told to breathe so we can endure the smog rather than being invited to help shut down the factory that's producing it. This is where it gets heavy for clinicians, the social workers like me, and the healers. Most people who go into therapy because they generally want to feel better, and most therapists enter the field because they have a deep soul level desire to help people navigate the dark woods of the human experience. but we have allowed the system to turn therapy into a refueling station. In our current model, we send people to therapy to get fixed so they can be more resilient, so they can go right back into the same meat grinder that chewed them up in the first place. We treat the patient, but we never touch the machine. We treat the soldier for PTSD so he can go back to the front lines, but we never ask why the war is happening. In our current model, we send people to therapy to... I've talked to so many therapists who are in tears behind closed doors because they feel like frauds. How do they sit across from a mother who's working 3 jobs, sleeping 4 hours a night, and losing her mind and tell her, find your center? How do you reframe a client's very real, very documented fear that the planet is being uninhabitable for their children? How do you use cognitive behavioral therapy to challenge the evidence of a client who is being racially profiled or systematically underpaid or facing eviction? The evidence is real, the evidence is everywhere. Therapists are being tasked with treating the wounds caused by systemic oppression, but they aren't allowed to treat the oppression itself. They're being told to teach people how to be resilient, but we need to be asked, resilient to what? Resilience is a double-edged sword. If you're too resilient, you just learn how to tolerate things that should be intolerable. You learn how to stay quiet while you're being crushed. You learn how to adjust to your harness so the weight of the plow doesn't chafe so much. Therapy shouldn't be about making you a better survivor of a bad system. It should be about helping find the clarity and the righteous anger necessary to demand a better one. We need a liberation psychology that recognizes that a person's mental health is inseparable from their political and economic reality. A therapist's office should be a place where we realize we aren't broken, the world is. If we want to understand our mental health, why it's plummeting, we have to look at the environment we're forced to inhabit. Humans are social animals. We are biologically wired for connection, the mutual aid, and for communal belonging. We are not designed to be rugged, atomized individuals living in isolated boxes, staring at glass rectangles. Over the last 40 years, we have systematically dismantled our social safety nets. The protective layers that keep us as a society healthy are gone. They've been weakened, and our sense of brotherhood and shared power has been weakened with it. We've erased the third spaces, those places like libraries and parks and community halls and front porches where you can exist without being expected to spend money. And in fact, how many agencies here are getting less money every day? Now, if you want to see a friend, you have to go to a bar or a cafe and buy a $7 latte for the right to sit in a chair. We've commodified human connection. We are more connected via screens than ever, yet we are dying of loneliness. This isn't an accident. A lonely person is a better consumer. A lonely person is more likely to buy things to fill the void. A lonely person is more likely to spend 6 hours scrolling through a stranger's feed on their highlight reels to feel inadequate and isolated. A lonely person is far less likely to demand better wages or better schools. The system thrives on our isolation. It wants us to believe that our depression and our anxiety are separate disorders that belong to us alone. It wants us to believe that we are broken units in an otherwise perfect machine. But we aren't. Our suffering is shared, collective. It's a collective reaction to the death of community. Hope isn't found in a pill or a yoga mat. Hope is found in the collective. It's found in the realization that your struggle is my struggle. When we stop being patients to be managed and start being neighbors to be supported, the entire power dynamic of our life shifts. The most powerful antidepressant in the world is the feeling of knowing that if you fall, your community will catch you. It's the feeling of knowing that you are a part of a we and not just an I. So if the problem is systemic, what does the cure look like? It looks like policy as medicine. We need to start treating legislation with the same urgency we treat medical intervention. We need to stop acting like politics is a separate hobby and realize it is the primary determinant of our biological health. If you want to lower the suicide rate, you don't build a better crisis hotline, you pass a living wage so people can actually afford to live. You provide paid parental leave so a mother isn't forced back to a retail floor 10 days after giving birth. You fund public transport so a person isn't trapped in social isolation. If you want to cure the pandemic of anxiety, you guarantee housing as a human right. In places where housing first policies have been implemented, meaning people get stable, permanent housing regardless of their employment status, their mental health symptoms don't just improve. In many cases, symptoms vanish. Why? Because the symptom wasn't a brain glitch. It was a rational reaction to the trauma of being unhoused. We need workplace democracy. We need a 4-day work week to reclaim our time, our families, and our humanity. We need to stop treating basic human needs like food, water, and shelter